Did 2025 feel like you were being spiritually attacked? Like no matter what you did, something was pressing on you from every direction, like the ground beneath you kept shifting just as you thought you'd found your footing. It wasn't a punishment, it wasn't a sin, and it wasn't you failing at life, it was preparation. Because spiritually, people aren't tested before they lose. They're tested before they outgrow who they've been. And if you stay with me in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened to you in 2025, why it felt so emotionally heavy, what it stripped away, what it quietly taught you, and why, once you truly understand this, you will never see your life the same way again. Spiritually, 2025 was not a year of expansion. It was a year of reduction, and reduction feels terrifying when we've been taught that growth should look like more. More success, more clarity, more energy, more certainty. But spiritually, growth often begins the opposite way. It begins with subtraction. What 2025 did was remove the layers you had built to survive. Not because you were wrong for building them, but because you no longer needed them. Roles you stepped into too early. Responsibilities you carried out of loyalty, not truth. Identities that once protected you, but were now costing you your peace. And when those layers start to fall away, it doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels like losing yourself. Many people describe 2025 as confusing, destabilizing, or disorientating. Spiritually, that makes complete sense. Because when the old self dissolves, the new one hasn't fully arrived yet. You're left in the middle, and the middle is uncomfortable. This is why so many people felt emotionally raw in 2025. You may have cried more than usual, or felt unexpectedly numb, or found yourself reacting more strongly to things you used to brush off. That wasn't regression, that was exposure. Spiritually, your soul was no longer buffering your emotions. It wanted you to feel again. You may also have noticed something else. Your tolerance changed. Things you once accepted, emotionally, relationally, energetically, suddenly felt unbearable. Conversations drained you. Certain environments felt heavy. Certain people felt like they were pulling at you rather than walking beside you. And that can make you question yourself. Why am I like this now? Why can't I just cope like I used to? But spiritually, coping is not the goal. Alignment is, and 2025 demanded alignment. Here's something most people don't realize. When your soul outgrows a situation, your nervous system will rebel before your mind understands why. You feel irritated, overstimulated, exhausted, not because something is wrong, but because something is no longer right. 2025 made that impossible to ignore. Many people also experienced profound fatigue in 2025. Not the kind sleep fixes, not the kind of holiday cures, a deeper tiredness, a soul-level exhaustion. Spiritually, this wasn't collapse, it was recalibration. Your body was releasing years, sometimes decades, of stored tension, vigilance, and emotional holding. You weren't becoming lazy, you were coming out of survival. And survival ending can feel scarier than survival itself. Because survival gives structure, it tells you who to be, what to tolerate, what to suppress. When survival loosens its grip, you're left asking, if I'm not fighting, who am I? 2025 sat you with that question. Another thing 2025 did spiritually was dismantle false timelines. The by now I should have timelines. The this is how life is supposed to go timelines. The expectations built from comparison, pressure, or inherited belief. Plans dissolved, certainty slipped away. Doors you expected to open didn't. And that can feel like failure. But spiritually, timelines only collapse when they were built from something other than truth. What didn't arrive wasn't meant to. It was never aligned with who you're becoming. You may also have noticed you stopped explaining yourself, stopped justifying your needs, stopped trying to convince people of your worth or intentions. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped abandoning yourself. Spiritually, that's discernment. And discernment isn't coldness. It's clarity without hostility. By the end of 2025, many people felt quieter, more selective, less reactive, less willing to chase, prove, or perform. And that can feel lonely at first, because when you stop feeding old dynamics, some connections fall away. Not as punishment, as consequence. Here's the part people rarely talk about. Spiritually, 2025 wasn't about becoming higher. It was about becoming truer. Less fragmented, less split. Less divided between who you are and who you pretend to be. That kind of integration isn't flashy. It's subtle, and it changes everything. If you're sitting here now thinking, I don't feel like who I was, but I don't yet recognize who I'm becoming, that doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're integrating. You are between shedding and rebuilding, between survival and sovereignty. So if 2025 cracked you open, made you rest, made you grieve, made you stop pretending, you weren't broken, you were initiated. Not into perfection, not into bypassing pain, but into truth. And truth doesn't rush, it roots, it stabilizes. It creates a life that no longer requires constant self-betrayal to maintain. If you're still watching this, it's because something in your body recognizes what I'm saying. You lived this, and you don't need to rush to figure it all out. Understanding arrives in layers. What 2025 did next was subtle and relentless. It began to dismantle the version of you that was built for survival, not the real you, but the adapted you, the one who learned how to cope, how to endure, how to stay functional when things weren't safe, stable, or fair. That version of you worked hard. It kept you going. It helped you survive seasons you never should have had to navigate alone. But spiritually, it had reached its limit. You may have noticed this as a quiet inner resistance. Things you used to do automatically started to feel wrong. Roles you once carried with pride felt heavy. Expectations you met without question suddenly felt like a cost you could no longer pay. And that can feel frightening, because when an identity dissolves, the mind panics. It says, if I'm not this anymore, who am I? 2025 didn't answer that question straight away. It simply removed what was no longer true. The people-pleaser identity, the fixer, the strong one, the one who copes quietly so others don't have to. Spiritually, those identities weren't punished. They were released, because a soul cannot evolve while pretending to be something it has outgrown. This is why many people felt emotionally exposed in 2025. You may have felt more sensitive than usual, less able to hold it together, more aware of what hurts, and less willing to ignore it. That wasn't weakness resurfacing. That was armor coming off. And armor always feels like safety until it becomes a cage. You might also have noticed a strange grief, not always tied to a specific event, not always something you could explain. A sadness for versions of yourself you're leaving behind, for paths that won't be walked, for futures that quietly dissolved. Spiritually, that grief is sacred. It means you're honoring what carried you here without dragging it into where you're going next. 2025 also disrupted your sense of certainty. You may have questioned things you once felt sure about. Values, beliefs, goals, even relationships. That's because certainty built on identity cannot survive an awakening. Only truth can, and truth doesn't shout. It waits until the false self grows tired of holding everything together. You might recognize this moment, where you realized you could no longer push through in the same way, where motivation stopped responding to pressure, where forcing yourself only made things worse. That wasn't failure. That was your soul refusing to be driven by fear anymore. Here's something important to understand. When identity unravels, the ego tries to rush replacement. It wants a new label, a new direction, a new version to latch onto. But spiritually, 2025 didn't allow that. Because becoming isn't immediate, it's organic. And anything rushed during this phase becomes another mask. So instead, you were left in the unraveling, not broken, not lost. Just between who you were and who you're not finished becoming yet. That space is uncomfortable, but it's also where truth has room to breathe. If you're listening to this and thinking, I don't recognize myself lately, that's not a problem. That's a sign the old self has loosened its grip. And what replaces it won't be constructed from fear, approval, or survival. It will emerge from alignment. This is why 2025 felt like it took so much from you. But what it really took was what you could no longer afford to carry. If this is resonating, stay with me. Because what came next wasn't random either. Your body, your energy, and your nervous system were already responding before you fully understood why. Why your body reacted before your mind did, and why exhaustion, withdrawal, and stillness were part of the awakening, not obstacles to it. What many people didn't understand in 2025 was that their body woke up before their mind did. That's why it felt confusing. You may have thought, why am I so tired? Why can't I cope the way I used to? Why do I just want to be alone? Spiritually, nothing was wrong. Your nervous system was recalibrating. For years, sometimes decades, your body learned how to stay alert. It learned how to scan for danger, how to brace, how to push through discomfort and call it strength, and that state became normal. But in 2025, something shifted. Your body stopped cooperating with survival mode. You may have felt overwhelmed by noise, people, or stimulation, emotionally flooded for no obvious reason, a sudden need to rest, withdraw, or slow down, frustration that productivity no longer worked. This wasn't regression. Spiritually, this was awakening through the body, because the soul doesn't integrate through logic alone. It integrates through safety. Here's the part most people don't get told. When the nervous system begins to feel safe enough to come out of survival, it often feels worse before it feels better. Because what was once held down starts to surface. Old emotions, old grief, old exhaustion that was postponed, not healed. 2025 opened that door. That's why rest didn't always feel refreshing. You weren't just tired from doing. You were tired from being vigilant for too long. And spiritually, vigilance is not your natural state. Presence is. Many people felt guilty for slowing down. They judged themselves, compared themselves, wondered why others seemed to handle life better. But spiritually, slowing down wasn't weakness. It was intelligence. Your system was learning a new rhythm, one that didn't require constant tension to survive. This is also why many people felt more emotional. Tears came easier, numbness lifted, sometimes replaced by sensitivity. Small things triggered big responses. That wasn't instability, that was thawing. When a frozen system warms up, it aches before it flows. You might have noticed you became more selective about where you placed yourself. Certain environments felt unbearable. Certain conversations drained you instantly. This wasn't avoidance, it was discernment rooted in the body. Your nervous system learned the difference between stimulation and nourishment, chaos and safety, familiarity and alignment. And once it learns that difference, it doesn't unlearn it. Spiritually, this is a critical phase, because a regulated nervous system is what allows truth to be lived, not just understood. Without regulation, insight stays theoretical. With regulation, insight becomes embodied. That's what 2025 was doing. You weren't losing motivation. You were losing the ability to be driven by fear. You weren't becoming antisocial. You were becoming selective. You weren't falling apart. You were coming back into your body. If you felt like life forced you to lie down, physically or emotionally, that wasn't punishment. That was your system saying, we can't go forward like this anymore. And spiritually, that was wisdom. If you've been wondering why your body seemed to know things before your mind did, stay with me. Because what 2025 broke next wasn't just internal, it was the timelines you were living by. One of the most unsettling things about 2025 was how little followed the plan. Things you expected to happen didn't. Things you worked toward stalled or dissolved. Certainty slipped through your fingers just when you thought you had a grip on it. And for many people, that felt like failure. But spiritually, it wasn't failure at all. It was correction. Timelines exist in the mind. They're built from expectation, comparison, pressure, and inherited belief about how life is supposed to unfold. By a certain age, you should be here. By now, you should have achieved that. If you do the right things, the right outcomes should follow. 2025 dismantled that illusion, not to punish you, but to free you from it. Spiritually, a timeline only collapses when it's misaligned with who you're becoming. If it were truly meant for you, it would have held. What fell away in 2025 wasn't taken from you. It was released. This is why so many people felt disoriented. When a timeline breaks, the mind scrambles. It wants certainty. It wants answers. It wants a new plan immediately. But the soul doesn't move that way. The soul pauses. Because rushing to replace a broken timeline often means rebuilding the same life with different details. And spiritually, 2025 refused to allow that. You may have noticed yourself questioning goals that once motivated you, success definitions that suddenly felt hollow, dreams that didn't light you up anymore. That wasn't confusion, that was honesty. Many people also felt like they were behind peers, behind expectations, behind some invisible schedule they could never quite catch. But spiritually, there is no behind. There is only alignment. And alignment cannot be rushed to meet an imagined deadline. Another quiet truth of 2025, control stopped working. The harder you tried to force outcomes, the more resistance you felt. And that's not because you did something wrong. It's because, spiritually, control is a survival strategy, not a creative one. 2025 was teaching surrender, not giving up, letting go of what no longer needs gripping. This is also why many people experienced sudden endings. Jobs, relationships, living situations, ways of life that seemed stable until they weren't. Spiritually, endings don't arrive to destroy. They arrive to complete, and completion makes space. You may not see yet what that space is for. That doesn't mean it's empty. It means it hasn't rushed itself into form. Here's something important to understand. When a timeline collapses, it creates a void. And the void can feel terrifying to the ego, because the ego wants movement, progress, reassurance. But spiritually, the void is where recalibration finishes. It's where the soul recalculates direction, without fear influencing the outcome. If 2025 forced you to stand in uncertainty longer than you were comfortable with, that wasn't abandonment. That was trust being built from the inside out. If you felt like control slipped away and something quieter took its place, stay with me. Because what emerged next wasn't loss. It was discernment. Why you stopped explaining yourself, stopped rescuing, and stopped chasing. And why that wasn't hardening, but wisdom. Something very quiet, but very powerful, began to happen as 2025 unfolded. You stopped explaining yourself, not because you didn't care, but because you finally understood that not everyone is meant to understand you. Spiritually, this is a turning point, because early growth seeks validation. Mature growth seeks alignment. You may have noticed you no longer had the energy to argue your truth. You stopped chasing conversations that went nowhere, stopped defending your intentions, stopped shrinking your needs so others could stay comfortable. That wasn't you becoming cold. That was clarity settling in. Spiritually, discernment is not judgment. Judgment says, you're wrong. Discernment says, this isn't mine. And 2025 taught you the difference. You may have also felt less inclined to rescue people, less compelled to fix, save, or carry others at your own expense. That can bring guilt at first, because for many people, love was learned as sacrifice. But spiritually, sacrifice without consent becomes self-abandonment, and your soul is done with that. This is why certain dynamics quietly ended. Not with explosions, not with drama, just with a lack of energy to continue pretending. Spiritually, when you stop feeding a pattern, it dissolves on its own. You may also have noticed your circle getting smaller, fewer people, deeper connections. That's not isolation, that's refinement. A nervous system that has tasted safety no longer tolerates chaos disguised as connection. Another sign of spiritual maturity in 2025, you stopped chasing outcomes. Not because you stopped caring about life, but because you stopped trying to force it. You began to sense when something was not aligned, and instead of pushing harder, you stepped back. That's not giving up. That's wisdom. Spiritually, chasing is rooted in fear. Receiving is rooted in trust. And 2025 moved you from one to the other. You may have also felt a deepening compassion, but with stronger boundaries. You could understand someone's pain without taking responsibility for it. That's not indifference. That's love without self-erasure. Here's something important. When discernment arrives, loneliness can appear briefly, because not everyone can walk with you at this depth. But that loneliness is temporary. It makes space for connections that don't require explanation, performance, or shrinking. If you felt quieter, less reactive, less invested in proving who you are, that's not detachment from life. That's presence. You're no longer negotiating your worth. If you're recognizing yourself in this, stay with me. Because what followed discernment wasn't clarity straight away. It was something many people mistake for emptiness. The I don't know who I am yet space, and why it's not a problem, but a sacred pause. After the unraveling, after the exhaustion, after the timelines broke and discernment settled in, many people found themselves in a strange, unfamiliar place. You didn't feel like who you used to be, but you also couldn't yet see who you were becoming. And that space can feel unsettling. Spiritually, it's often misunderstood. People call it emptiness, or stagnation, or being lost. But that's not what it is. This space is the void. And the void isn't absence, it's integration. Spiritually, the void appears when the old self has stepped aside and the new self hasn't rushed in yet. It's the pause between exhale and inhale, between shedding and rebuilding, between survival and sovereignty. And it's uncomfortable because the mind wants certainty, but the soul wants truth. In 2025, many people felt this as a lack of direction, a loss of urgency, a quiet detachment from goals that once felt important. And that can be frightening. Because we're taught that forward motion equals success. But spiritually, integration requires stillness. Here's something important to understand. Nothing new can fully arrive until what has just left is fully metabolized. The soul doesn't stack identities, it integrates them, and integration takes time. This is why forcing clarity during this phase feels wrong, why rushing decisions feels heavy, why figuring it all out creates resistance. Because the answers aren't ready to be spoken yet. They're still settling into the body. The void is where your nervous system learns that it no longer has to perform to be safe. It's where your soul learns that it can exist without proving, striving, or bracing. That's not nothing, that's everything. Many people judge themselves harshly in this phase. They thought they were unmotivated, or falling behind, or losing their spark. But spiritually, what you were losing was urgency rooted in fear. What was being built was presence rooted in truth. You may have noticed you needed more quiet, more space, more time alone. Not because you were withdrawing from life, but because life was reorganizing itself inside you. The soil was being turned. And nothing blooms while that's happening. This phase doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with clarity or confidence. It comes with humility, with waiting, with listening. If you're in this space now, hear this. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are integrating. And integration is invisible from the outside, but foundational on the inside. Spiritually, rushing this phase creates another false self. Letting it unfold creates something real. If you've been wondering whether this quiet, in-between space means you're doing something wrong, stay with me. Because what emerges from the void is not confusion, it's wisdom. Not lessons on paper, but embodied truths that changed how you move through life. What 2025 taught you didn't arrive as neat lessons. There were no clear signs, no certificates of growth, no moment where everything suddenly made sense. What you learned in your body, in how you respond now, in what you no longer tolerate, in what you refuse to abandon inside yourself. You learned that peace is not something you earn, it's something you protect. And protecting it sometimes means disappointing people, changing direction, or choosing yourself without explanation. That wasn't selfish. That was survival evolving into sovereignty. You learned that not everything is meant to be healed by effort. Some things are healed by leaving. Leaving environments that keep you tense. Leaving conversations that go in circles. Leaving identities that require you to betray your truth to maintain them. You learned that staying is not always strength. Sometimes leaving is. You also learned how much your body knows. Before your mind could articulate it, your body was already saying yes or no. You learned to trust that signal. The tightness, the heaviness, the calm. That's not anxiety. That's intelligence. And once you start listening to it, life begins to organize itself differently. You learned that clarity doesn't always come as answers. Sometimes it comes as non-negotiables. Things you simply won't do anymore. Ways you won't be spoken to. Cycles you won't re-enter. You didn't need to explain those decisions. You just felt them. You learned the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness drains you, solitude restores you. And in 2025, you discovered that being alone can be far healthier than being surrounded by people who don't see you. You learned that growth doesn't always feel expansive. Sometimes it feels like grief. Grief for old versions of yourself, for old dreams, for paths that quietly closed. And you learned that grief doesn't mean regret, it means respect. You learned that being understood is not required for being aligned. You stopped translating yourself for people who weren't listening. Stopped shrinking truths so they'd fit into someone else's comfort. That wasn't defiance, that was dignity. And maybe most importantly, you learned that your worth is not up for negotiation. Not with partners, not with family, not with systems that only value you when you're compliant. You stopped asking for permission to exist as you are. That's not arrogance, that's embodiment. These lessons didn't make you louder, they made you steadier. They didn't make you more certain about everything. They made you more honest about what isn't for you. If you're recognizing yourself in this, stay with me. Because what comes after learning isn't striving, it's direction. Why life feels different now, why you can't go back, and why what's forming next is quieter, truer, and more stable. After an initiation, life doesn't suddenly get louder. It gets quieter, and that can be confusing because we're taught to expect fireworks after growth, big moves, bold declarations, dramatic change. But spiritually, what comes after initiation is stability, not the kind built on certainty, the kind built on truth. You may have noticed that things feel different now. Not perfect, not easy, just different. You don't react the same way. You don't chase the same things. You don't panic in the same places. That's because once initiation is complete, your nervous system no longer negotiates with what it already knows. You can't unknow what you've learned. This is why going back feels impossible. Old dynamics feel hollow. Old distractions feel loud. Old versions of success feel misaligned. Not because you're above them, but because you're past them. Spiritually, initiation creates a point of no return. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet one. What begins to form after initiation isn't a new identity you have to construct. It's a life that starts organizing itself around your truth. Opportunities that don't require self-erasure. Connections that feel simpler, not heavier. Choices that come with less inner conflict. Not because everything is clear, but because you are. You may notice you move slower now, more deliberately. That's not hesitation. That's discernment integrated into action. You're no longer driven by urgency, fear, or proving. You're led by alignment. This is also why peace begins to feel non-negotiable. You'll walk away sooner, say no faster. Protect your energy without apology. Not because you're guarded, but because you finally understand its value. Spiritually, this phase isn't about becoming someone new. It's about living as who you already are, and that takes courage. Because authenticity attracts what matches it, and dissolves what doesn't. If things feel quieter now, that's not stagnation. That's coherence. Your inner world is no longer fighting itself. If you're feeling this shift, stay with me. Because the final piece of this isn't about what you do next. It's about who you trust yourself to be. Grounding, reassurance, sovereignty, and peace. The part that lands in the body and stays. If you've made it this far, it's because something in you already knew this was true. Not in your head, in your body, in that quiet place that doesn't shout, explain, or prove. 2025 didn't happen to you. It happened for your alignment. You weren't singled out. You weren't targeted. You weren't falling behind. You were being prepared. Prepared to live with less self-betrayal. Prepared to stop negotiating your worth. Prepared to walk forward without dragging old pain into every new season. What you went through wasn't random. It followed an ancient pattern. One humans have always walked when the old life no longer fits the soul. First the stripping, then the unraveling, then the stillness, then the clarity. And finally, the return, not back to who you were, but home to who you've always been beneath the noise. If you feel different now, quieter, steadier, less willing to abandon yourself, that's not loss. That's integration. You don't need to rush what comes next. You don't need to force meaning out of every moment. What's forming now is built on truth. And truth doesn't need pressure to grow. It unfolds naturally. So wherever you are right now, in rebuilding, in resting, in waiting, or simply breathing again, know this. You didn't break in 2025. You shed, and what you shed made room for a life that doesn't require you to survive it, only to live it. If this video found you at the right moment, take that as confirmation. You're not late. You're not lost. You're ready. And once you see what 2025 really did to you spiritually, you carry that knowing forward, quietly, powerfully, on your own terms. If this resonated with you in any way, leave a comment. Please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm push this video out to people who need it. As always, this has been Valkyrie. Thanks for stopping by. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.